welcome to All Around Sound. My name is Troy, and if this is your first time joining, I would implore you to go back and check our first episode and second episode. You can go to YouTube /Lone Lion 1980 and check that out there, or find us on Facebook at AAS Troy AS. Again, that is AAS TROYAS. I'm just being silly. Anyway, thanks for joining. If you checked out our last episode that we restreamed yesterday, we rebroadcasted yesterday from last Friday, technical difficulties, but we're going to go full steam ahead and give you the premiere of 103. Now, this one was kind of a fun one for me. This is the introduction to rhythm. You know, we spend so much time talking about pitch and notation and things like that, but depending on your instrument, hopefully not percussion, sometimes rhythm is neglected. And so we want to just get a basic introduction into rhythm and different rhythmic patterns, different time signatures, and so that's the purpose of this. Again, if you have questions, comments, or if there's something you don't agree with or something you want to piggyback on, I always welcome comments. Check us out on Facebook's Facebook page. That is AASTROYAS. And leave us a comment, send us a like, or a shout out, or whatever. But yes, so this is episode 103. We are going to discuss rhythm. So without any further delay, let's get to it. All right. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Troy, and this is episode 3 of All Around Sound. Welcome, the theory component. If you haven't joined us in our previous episodes, I implore you, please check us out. Go back to episode 1, intro of music, 2, intro to notation, and some other supplements that we discussed, including accidentals. But this one is going to focus on rhythm and some of the general aspects of rhythm. As I said, music is not just pitch, it's not just sound, it's beat, it's rhythm, it's feeling. So when we talk about music, there is a component of pitch, but there is also a component of time. And that is what I hope to discuss with you today as we get on our journey for this episode of All Around Sound. Now, as always, we got some vocabulary. We got a lot of vocabulary in this one, so bear with me. All right, first, when we talk about vocabulary, first thing we're going to talk about is rhythm. We'll discuss the beat, tempo, meter, measures, bar line, and time signatures. The additional vocabulary includes downbeat, any upswing or upbeat, syncopation, double dots. We'll talk about ties, slurs, their similarities, and anacrusis and pickup measures. So now, getting into rhythm, I just want to share a few definitions from Clendening and Casca. If you know, you know. I love Clendening's definitions. Refers to the duration of pitch and silence used in a piece. Casca reads, a general term used to refer to the time aspect of music contrasted with the pitch aspect. And so this is a little diagram, as I was talking about earlier. Think of the P as being your pitch in relation to time. So as the pitch can accelerate, the pitch can increase or decrease, and just as time goes forward. So that's kind of the ratio or relationship when it comes to pitch and time. So now moving on, the next vocabulary word we're going to see is beat. And Clendening's definition is the primary pulse. Casca's is the basic pulse of a musical passage. The next word is tempo. And tempo is the rate at which the beat occurs, the speed of the beat. It's just how fast or how slow the tempo or the speed of the track or the music is going. Now, meter is interesting. A work's meter tells how its beats are divided, either simple or compound, and how they're grouped, duple, triple, or quadruple. We'll get into that a little bit in a little bit. Also, beats tend to be grouped into patterns that are consistent throughout the passage. The pattern of beats is called the meter. Okay? So we group notes in what we call a measure. Now notice this picture of the staff. Notice the treble staff that we talked about, the treble clef. Also notice that time signature, that 4/4. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. Okay? So Casca says of measures the groups of beats. Simply put, Clendening, beats are grouped into larger units called measures or bars separated by bar lines. Notice that line all the way to the right? Bam! That's what we call a bar line, yes, ladies and gentlemen. In notation, the end of a measure is always indicated by a vertical line through the staff called a bar line. Bar lines divide measures. That's very important to know. Now, I will say this. There are some 20th century and contemporary composers. Sometimes you'll notice, if you look at a system, we call a system grouping, or a grouping of measures, like a staff or something like that. So if you look on a page, you might have 4 staves or something like that. Each one we call a system. So sometimes you'll notice a system, and at the end, there's no bar line. And that happens sometimes in a lot of times in contemporary music, and it'll just continue on to the next system. So be mindful. The bar line denotes the end of the measure. Sometimes you don't see a bar line at the end of that measure, though, depending on that composer. All right. So now let's get to time signatures. Casca reads, a symbol that tells the performer how many beats will occur in each measure, what note value will represent the beat, and whether the beat is simple or compound. Clendening says, establishes the meter and beat unit. So notice these time signatures. These are some arguably common time signature. I would arguably say 4/4 is probably the most common. Then there's a 3/4 here and a 6/8. So let's talk about what these numbers denote. So you can think of it as a fraction. Remember, I've said music it's more than art. It's a science. It's math. It's very mathematical. When we talk about frequencies, there's specifics. If you don't remember, refer back to that conversation in, what was that, episode 2? See, I don't even remember which one. Actually, that was episode 1. Yeah, so definitely go back. Okay, so back to time signatures. The top number, if you look at the 4/4, let's focus on the 4/4. The top number tells you how many beats per measure. The bottom number, or denominator if you will, the bottom number is going to tell you which note value receives 1 beat. So, if there is a 4 on the bottom of the fraction, at the bottom of the time signature, that means a quarter note gets 1 beat. Just like in 4/4 time. In 3/4 time, what does that tell me? Top number tells me there's 3 beats in a measure. The 4, that bottom number, is going to tell me that the quarter note gets 1 beat. So I can fit 3 quarter notes in that 3/4 measure. Now, looking at the 6/8, this is a little different. What that tells me is that the 8 on the bottom tells me that the 8th note will receive 1 beat, and that the quarter note will receive 2, because the 8th is half of the quarter. That is what we call subdivision. Subdivision of the beat, and we will go a little bit further into that. So now here is just an example of a couple of measures. Look at it on the grand staff in relation to the time signatures, the bar line, and that double bar line. Now the double bar line, whenever you see that, that is the end of the piece. That is the end of the song, the movement, perhaps, depending on the instrument. But that is the end of the music. All right, so now we're moving on to notes. Now, we went in depth in the second episode on notes, so go back and take a look at that. But now, you may, and if you were there for that episode, you may remember this image. So now, using what we've just talked about in relation to rhythm and time signatures, hopefully the note discussion that we had will make more sense. So let's take a look at this image where you have a treble staff. You have the 4/4 time signature, okay? Now, we've already discussed the types of notes in the previous episode, but we'll refresh in a little bit. Remember that the whole note gets 4 beats, okay? The half note that's in measure 2, each half note is going to receive 2 beats because the time signature is 4/4. What does that tell me? The top 4 tells me there are 4 beats in a measure, but it also tells me that the quarter note's going to get 1 beat because there's a 4 on the bottom. So if the quarter note's going to get 1 beat because there's a 4 on the bottom, that tells me the half note in measure 2 is going to get 2 beats. That tells me that the whole note in the first measure that you see there is going to receive 4 beats. That tells me a quarter note gets 1, and that tells me an eighth note gets a half of 1. Okay? So looking at that first measure from the left, now we read left to right. Looking at that first measure with the 4/4, with that whole note would receive 4 beats. The second measure with the 2 half notes, each half note would receive 2 beats. Looking at the third measure again, whole note, it's going to get 4 beats. Now look at the fourth measure. There are 4 quarter notes in that measure. That's a perfect example to line up with the time signature. You have 4 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right there. Okay? Notice in the final measure, you have 2 quarter notes, but you also have 4 eighth notes, because 4 eighth notes can fit in the space of 2 quarters because it is a subdivision of the beat. So here's a little refresher on the notes. Remember, we discussed this in our last episode. So now we're going to move on to the additional vocabulary and refer to the downbeat and the upswing. I might need my stand for this one just a little bit, but it's all good. We're gonna work it out. Ooh, yeah. Piano's hot. All right. So the downbeat, and I'm going to demonstrate a little bit to you as a conductor. Whenever you may see conductors. Whenever the first beat of any measure is what we call the downbeat, because it's like a 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now in a quadruple time, if that were a 4/4 time, that would be the direction of the conductor's baton. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that up. Or if it were 2/4 time, kind of like a march, like a 1, 2, 1, 2, down, up, down, up. Think like 2/4 would be kind of like Stars and Stripes Forever or something like that. 2, 3. Ba na 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 2, 3. Da na 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 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on and so forth. But notice that the 2/4 can also be thought of like it could add up to a 4/4, but we're not going to get into that. That's something completely different feel and whatnot. But anyway, so I want you to kind of get a feel of this particular beat. So this is the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Feel that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2, and 3, and 4. That's the up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So you call this a quadruple. 1. So these are the downbeats. 1, 2. Now we're going to put the upswing just a little bit. You're going to hear that. 1, 2, here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So those ands, when I'm saying and, that's the upswing. Notice the numbers are going down. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That is the subdivision. That is the division. That is the difference between the downbeat and the upswing. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So moving on. This is one of my favorite topics when it comes to rhythm, syncopation. Now, when you stress a rhythmic figure that's normally weak, that is what we call syncopation. When you accent the offbeat. And you can syncopate by using a tie or a dot. And I just want you to notice these examples that I have. This is actually the same example, but I'm going to give you a little demonstration just a little bit. Notice on the right image, notice where those arrows are pointed. The arrows are pointed to what we call a tie, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit. The ties lengthen a value of the same note. Notice those are on the same note. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. I want you to hear how that tie gives it a bit of syncopation, or how it strengthens the offbeat. Check it out. Let's try this. Here we go. Notice that? Okay. So, the same thing, the same kind of effect can be achieved by a dot or a double dot. Now, the significance of the dot is this. It always adds to the duration 1/2 the value of the note, rest or dot that precedes it. Okay? So what does that mean? It adds a value of 1/2 to the preceding note. So if I had a quarter note, or excuse me, if I had a half note and then I had a dot that followed it, we'd call that a dotted half note. In 4/4 time, we're keeping things in 4/4 for right now. So in 4/4 time, a half note receives 2 beats. If I put a dot behind that half note and make it a dotted half note, it receives 2 beats, those 2 beats plus a half of 2. Half of 2 is 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. A dotted half note will receive 3 beats in the time signature of 4/4. So here's a little bit of a demonstration. Let's see if and there's the difference between the dot and the double dot. Let's see if I can get that for you one more time. There we go. So when you add a double dot, it makes it twice as fast. Think of one dot as being a half and a second dot being a quarter. So it would be the value of the note plus the half plus a quarter. I know, math, right? I warned you. So now let's get back to the ties, okay? So a tie is a curved line that connects 2 notes of the same pitch, creating a new duration that is equal to their sum. It is a small art connecting the note heads of 2 or more identical pitches. That is very important that they're identical. Adding the durations of the notes together, it adds values of the notes. It adds the values of the notes. All right? So now here's the difference between the slurs. The ties and the slurs look similar. But this one is an art that connects 2 or more different pitches. It's a type of articulation. We'll talk about articulations later. What a slur does is it signals the musician to play legato, or what we say, that's an Italian term, or smooth and connected. The opposite of legato is staccato, or short and detached. So whenever we see a slur, it means you want it to be lyric. It should be florid, legato, smooth, right? And we will talk a little bit about articulations in a supplementary video. Join us for that. And finally, I want to talk about the anacrusis, or the pickup measure. I felt America the Beautiful was kind of a perfect example. It's a measure that starts before the first measure is played. So, what do I mean by that? Uh, in America the Beautiful, you'll notice that when we sing it, it's 1, 2, 3. Oh, beautiful for space. Or let me demonstrate. 1, 2, 3. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain. For now, notice how I started and I said, "Oh, that was on the upbeat." It was the fourth beat of a measure that theoretically is not there. I'm not going to get too confusing, but just think about it like this. The pickup measure or the anacrusis is there for you to count in. So as I've done, 1, 2, 3. Oh, beautiful. Now I'm just going to warn you, I was singing that in key of A major. I'm about to play this in the key of C, so it's going to sound a little different. And theoretically, at the end of that grain, it wouldn't be a whole note. It would be a dotted half note with a quarter. Amber waves of grain for purple mountain. Yeah, okay. But you get it. That is an anacrusis and a pickup measure. Now, as I said, now we're going to wrap it up. As I said, this is just an intro to rhythm. Oh, now I want to play. So, this is just an intro to rhythm. And I just wanted to give you guys a basic vocabulary. But as I always say, if you have questions, please reach out. I always love having discussions about music and theory and things like that. And remember, my degrees are voice performance, so I don't know everything about theory. I know a lot. Theory is where I started with, and I love theory. But I'm always intrigued to hear what other vocalists have to say, other pianists have to say, other musicians and instrumentalists have to say, producers. So there's not just one area of music to delve into. There are many. So I welcome a conversation. Again, guys, thank you for joining. Let's see. I think episode 4 is actually going to be our intro to tetrachords, scales, and chords. It's a big one, so we may have to divide this up into a couple parts, but I'm really excited about that. So check it out. All right, thanks for joining.